Good afternoon, everyone. As the Intertropical Convergence Zone continues to shift during the amplification of the Grand Solar Minimum, we're going to see all types of signs in the skies. New adjustment on the hurricane season downward. Hey, wait, I was told because all the global warming we would have more hurricanes. Well, I guess that's not going to be the case. Downtick on the next bar there. Sandstorms everywhere. Middle East, Europe, Asia. Massive atmospheric compression events across Myanmar and Laos that have just broken dams. The size of the water spouts, that's not a water spout, that is a tornado. And looking at all the static electricity in the atmosphere from the dust storms, 360,000 lightning strikes in 24 hours. And with all these changes, you are absolutely going to need to grow some of your own food. Microgreens, sprouts, trueleafmarket.com. The Adapt 2030 link is below in the description box, as well as the links to tonight's stories and images, and a link to Mini Ice Age Conversations, tri-weekly podcast, anywhere you can find a podcast hosted on the net. Let's talk about the Intertropical Convergence Zone that shifts during grand solar minimums. We can look back 3,000 years in time to take a look at the moisture as well as the wind patterns with many different proxies to see where this intertropical convergence zone shifted as our magnetosphere gets weak due to the sun's output diminishing. The new Eddy Grand Solar Minimum is intensifying, and as our Earth progresses deeper into this grand solar minimum, we will start to see changes in the atmosphere, wind flow patterns, moisture, and all the things you're seeing in the front page headlines of the news. That's not CO2, that's this. So if wind patterns are shifting, we should definitely see changes in the skies around us, signs in the skies. You've been told as more CO2 is in our atmosphere, it is going to drive these most intense hurricane seasons. Oh wait, Colorado State Department of Atmospheric Sciences, they just downgraded the season to less than originally anticipated. That makes no sense to me. And also how they're able to readjust the forecast every month or two as we go through the season. So at the very end, they look like they were right on the money versus what they put out during the beginning of the season. But that's a whole nother subject. So taking a look at the stormy seasons, 1967 hurricanes to today's hurricanes, that bar on the right, that's going to drop substantially. And even last year's hurricanes, those super intense storms that rolled over the Caribbean, that barely even registered in the overall scheme of things compared to what, 2005, 1979. There's been many more years more intense than that. Also with jet stream flows going out of their regular patterns, we're going to start to see more dust storms. Now this is an incredible thing here. The Middle East gets dust storms every single year. But this one was so intense, more than 1,000 road accidents and 16,000 emergency calls for help. Also some images within the story here. You can really see how far that dust storm extended around. We've also seen how much dust is blowing off of the Sahara west over into United States and South America above the norm. But then also these dust storms spreading up into Europe as well. Incredible amounts, far above the averages. This is what some of the heat in southern Spain is all about at the moment. But then these dust storms aren't limited exclusively to the Middle East. Here we are. China. This is the third one this year. They had such an intense dust storm at the beginning of the year that it blew clear out into the central Pacific. You have to realize that went all the way across China, clear off the west over into the Pacific. You know, we're talking 4,000 or 5,000 mile dust storm there. And with this many particles up in the air, you can definitely expect some lightning and static charge. Taking a look in 360,000 lightning strikes, flashes in a 24-hour period. Also, the winds are going to be spinning a little bit differently as storms start to form. Now, we've seen an enormous amount of just waterspout activity this year, anywhere there are bodies of water, even tiny lakes. But now here's what I really wanted to focus in on. The intensity and size build-up of these waterspouts. Now, usually waterspouts, they come down, they're spaghetti thin, they roll along, they're kind of really beautiful to look at, especially if it's coming towards sunset. but these have definitely changed. When you look at that, if you just substituted the background for Kansas wheat fields, that would be an EF2 or 3 tornado. When we get into the intensity like this, seems to be the most intense during this water spot that was filmed off the coast. That's an absolute danger to shipping. And the heaviness of water with debris versus wind with debris, huge difference. Also earlier in the day, in that same location, a different water spout formed, but check out the thickness and intensity of this one. And in my opinion, if that were overland, that would easily be an EF2 to 3 tornado. You're seeing all these changes in the atmosphere, and then the atmospheric compression events. The news media was all over the arc storms last year trying to explain the heavy all-time precipitation, record-breaking rains and snowfalls across the western part of the United States. They called it an arc storm. Well, this is something exactly the same, yet in a smaller location. It's called an atmospheric compression event. We've seen this in Kenya as well. Dam breaks due to too much water. We saw it down in South America, and here we are. Another instance, July 25th. So much water came down that the dam actually couldn't hold it. It overtopped and then collapsed. This seems to be happening a lot lately with our infrastructure. And how much worse is it going to get? Well, as we move into the next 3 to 4 years, double, triple, quadruple what you're seeing now. And this just off the news wire day before yesterday, massive floods, again, atmospheric compression events, most rain in over 30 years in Myanmar. So you really need to look back to see where these records were broken from previously. Because if it was that much before, then it's not really a new thing, is it? But the areas here in Myanmar, Bago seems to have gotten the most rain there, number 1 position. And I used to buy coffee in Myanmar, further up north in the Shan State, bit northeast of Mandalay. So I'm pretty familiar with the locations here. Usually down in the deltas where they get a huge amount of floods with the monsoon every year. But this is strange. It seems to be centered toward the Thai border and Taniantari and these different areas down south. It's kind of the opposite what you expect. You would expect it far more out west where you see the delta running down. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. Please remember to subscribe and click that bell to get the latest updates. And also you can find all the links that I'm posting, even though I don't talk about it in the video, on the social media streams that I have going on, and the Tri-Weekly podcast mini Ice Age conversations, more in-depth analysis, half-hour programs on the very same changes that we're seeing, how you can protect yourself in the future, and what to expect as we move forward.